Hello, my name's Steve Ash. I'm the founder of Property Strats, and you're tuning into another episode of My Next Property. I'm an ex-Goldman Sachs vice president, and I've managed to build an $80 million property portfolio, which we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to throw over to Tom, and Tom is going to be in the hot seat here. How are you doing, Tommy?
I'm in the hot seat, or you're in the hot seat?
Oh,
it's your property portfolio we're going through today, not mine. I did mine last week.
I was just thinking, usually I've been interviewing you, I think, recently, so that's why I thought you're going to be in the hot seat, but you are dead right. I am in the hot seat, and it's a bit nerve-wracking.
And I'm going to absolutely hammer you.
You have been hammering me already about my lack of sort of boozing and this sort of stuff, and how I'm pretty boring.
The early bowling club last week, you didn't even have a beer with me.
No, I had a lemon lime bitter.
Very average.
And I noticed all the bowling people looking at me as well, so I was really sort of like pulling in Burleigh Head's bowling centre. Yeah. But they were having the life of Riley over there, weren't they?
Couldn't even hear each other.
No, couldn't
they?
No, they had that. What was that presentation they were doing? Having some sort of raffle.
Bowling. That'll be me in 20 years' time.
Yeah, I think that's me already, the way I'm going. I'm sort of hanging on to the golf thing at the moment, but
exactly.
they look like they're having the life of Riley.
And mate, Burleigh's put on the weather again today, eh? How good is it?
It's beautiful out there, isn't it? Like, here we are sort of talking property stuff. No place I'd rather be, but if I had to be another place on Burleigh Beach, not that I'd be surfing out there, but I'd like to get out there. But my wife and son are up here as well, and they're sort of enjoying the beach. So good on them. So
good stuff.
So yeah, but awesome. Yeah, I'm sort of really excited to talk about the origin story, so to speak. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm Batman as we were just talking about off screen, but more like boring man. But there you go. Yeah.
So mate, look, we've heard a lot about your story on various podcasts in bits and pieces, but today we thought we'd sort of bring it all together and give our listeners a good tangible insight in terms of how you put it all together and got to where you have gotten to today. I mean, it's amazing. $18 million portfolio value now. Yeah. And we're just going into that 18 million. So we're going to talk about that kind of, a few people have heard of where I've managed to get to, and that's all been done like, I say in the 9 to 5, but it was more the PAYG. 7 to 9 PAYG job. And now we kind of obviously got the business growing now. The portfolio's got to a certain level. LVR is very small on the portfolio. So it means we go into a different type of lending, and now we're kind of leveraging up to the next level. I'm trying to chase you, Tommy. You getting
there? I'm coming for you.
Yeah, I know. You are. I'm a bit worried about that. So look, I think it's such an important point, PAYG, right? Because most of our listeners are in PAYG incomes. You hear about these investors that are on these massive portfolios, but ultimately they've got these amazing businesses that help sustain that, right? But that's not what it's like for the majority of our listeners, right? PAYG incomes is generally what a lot of these guys are on.
Well, no, exactly. And that's why I want this to be relatable. Yeah, I am ex-Goldman Sachs.
Exactly.
But I wasn't earning crazy amounts of money there. And so if you're mining, for example, you'd be on more money than what I was earning on at Goldman. So we've kind of I've done, when I started in Australia, I was on 55 grand a year.
Wow.
So that's how. So it's not that was back in 2007. But again, I think
after tax,
it's really persistence that's really got us to where we've got to, and we can talk a little bit about this. So obviously came to Australia, watched the Ashes, got absolutely flogged 5-0. But we won't go into that too much. But for some reason, I just had it in my sort of point of view that I wanted to do something else other than my career. I wanted to build some passive income, build wealth. But I think the biggest thing is I didn't want to rent. I just want to go and get a property. So I had no idea what I was doing. I had to get foreign investment review. I was on a 457. Got the first apartment. We kind of pounded the pavements for weeks, looked at all of these areas in the inner west, Leichhardt, Petersham, 5 Dock. All of these properties were about that sort of 550 mark.
What year was this roughly?
This was 2007.
2007,
yeah.
Okay.
And then we sort of found this area like Cogra, which is, 12, 13K south of CBD, fast train line into the city. And all of a sudden we're seeing these apartments that about 140, 150 square meters. So almost double the size of these 5 Dock shoe boxes, in a boutique block. And we went for this one for 460, didn't get it, but then built the relationship with the agent, and he gave us my first property was an off market, which I don't think I've talked about before, which is the one next to it. And he said, you might be able to get that deal. And we moved pretty quick. 442,000 we got that for. And
in Cogra?
That was in Cogra.
Wow, 2-by.
That was a 2-bed, 2-bath. Had a mezzanine level, so it's one of those kind of New York style loft type properties. But yeah, no, it's about 1K to the station, very close to sort of Dole's Point, and where the St. George, I'm not an NRL person. You might have to help me out here.
The St. George, I know.
Illawarra, is it?
Yeah.
So the is it the Dragons?
Yeah. St. George Dragons.
Sorry, viewers.
You live in Brisbane, you don't even know the St. George Illawarra Dragons?
Oh, this is Sydney.
That is a joke.
That was Sydney, yeah. So I did I've got into it a little bit more, but they were just around the corner in the stadium there, and then we had Dole's Point, exactly, and then we had the regional part. We used to love it there. So
beautiful part of Sydney. Really is, yeah.
It is a good part, and so we kind of fell into it accidentally. And I remember we just, funny like St. George, we got a loan at St. George. I had no idea. I just walked into a branch. They gave me the money, and we fixed the loan because my boss said always fix your loan. Yeah. And so that goes to show that's where I was back then. I had no idea about anything. Yeah. Then I realised that all of that advice was pretty crap. Yeah. And then
what was the interest rate on the fixed loan you're paying?
7.6.
7.6.
So then, and actually. Obviously, interest rates were higher, but he came from an era, obviously, where interest rates were 13, 14% or whatever back, 10 years. And he was worried about them going to that point. What happened was they started coming down. And then we were fixed at 7.6 and it was quite annoying seeing 6.5. And that's when I started educating myself about property.
Yeah. So 492, 2x2 back in 2000 and...
442.
442, sorry.
2007.
What would that be worth now, you think?
Actually not much, but
really?
no. When I say not much, actually 5 years later we sold it for 787.
Yeah, okay.
So basically almost doubled. Yeah. But the funny thing is now, and this is like we'll go into this in a pod because I do think there's so much value in certain units in Sydney. Units have done nothing in the last 10 years,
and once the growth happens with housing, they just kick into gear after that, right?
Well, yeah, because they're affordable.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think COVID's distorted that. I mean, it's a whole thing for another show, but really that apartment's probably now worth 800.
Yeah,
I'd say.
Okay.
So it's barely done nothing since we sold it in 2013, 14. Okay.
Well, that's great. So talk to me about the next one. So that was your first purchase, and you mentioned persistence was one of the main things that you felt was the ingredient you needed to get to where you needed to get to?
Well, yeah, I think so. So there I got to know probably my first mentor figure back then is like, I'll give him a pop, like Richard Taylor. Mm-hmm. So he was a mortgage broker he kind of used to frequent the property forum Summersoft, very successful investor. He was getting about $400,000 in passive income back then, which is a massive number. And he used to be big in Brizzy. And so kind of I was quite big on wanting to learn from people who'd done it. You don't get any value if someone hasn't done it. And it's like getting a golf lessons and the person instructing you's got a 22 handicap. You want to be getting persons from, people who know exactly what they're doing. And that's kind of what I thought here. So I tuned out all of this other noise that people were saying, properties are going to crash. There was this story I've talked about quite a lot when I was in the bar at State Street. This is before the GFC happened. Yeah. She was renting in Manly, and I just said I bought this place in Colgrove, and she goes, "Oh, there's going to be a property crash." Yeah. Here we go. But at that time, I said, "Well, I don't think there's going to be a property crash. I think they're actually pretty cheap, if anything." And she goes, "Well, there's going to be a property crash. You're going to lose all your money. I'm going to be buying all the properties up in Manly 50% cheaper than they are now, and blah, blah, blah." And then, fast forward like 3 years or 4 years after that, Manly had doubled. Yeah, wow. So, and
it's such an important point, right? Every successful investor surrounds himself with the right people because they have such a big impact on your outlook and what your actions are from that point onwards. It's so important.
Absolutely critical. It's like osmosis. You become who you are. It was a kind of there's a book where it's like you are who your 5 people you connect with mostly are, and that's why you sometimes get in a bubble, but then that helps propel you to the next level. So Richard, then I got to know my accountant, like Manzuro, who kind of is the principal of KHI Partners, and his portfolio is getting close to sort of like 9 figures now. So that's how, but I learned, from those, to your point, those are 2 massive influences in my life. And I learned a lot through these guys. And now my current broker as well has been, because Richard then went off and did big things. My current broker, Michael Shah, he's got a massive portfolio, and really, we'll go into that in a second. But really, simplicity is what Michael kind of like lives and breathes, and we're going to have him on the pod at some point, which I'm really excited about.
Definitely.
And that's kind of the pivot. But I'm jumping ahead to sort of that. But we can go into the three sort of key decisions, I suppose, about what's getting us here. And so
let's go to number one. What was that first key decision?
So one of the key decisions there is really geographical diversity, and sort of like, so we've talked about sort of like the Kogarah property. What we were doing back then, as I was still sort of learning the game, learning from these sort of mentor figures, was I was still pretty comfortable just to buy in the neighborhood. So we had probably the big critical decision that happened back then. So going on to sort of like my broker then. So we sort of lived in Kogarah. We decided, okay, I was looking to get married with my now wife, obviously, back then. And we kind of were then looking to upscale the house. I just joined Goldman Sachs then. So getting more decent income. But we're going to sell the Kogarah property and then get this property. And we looked around Sydney, looked at quite a few areas, but we saw a lot of value in Hills District and Baulkham Hills in particular. And so we went to do that. We're going to sell, and my broker said, "Don't sell."
And when you say you saw a lot of value, what did you see specifically? Break that down for me.
Well, houses on big plots of land. So 700, 800 square meters at around about 700,000. So my boss at that particular time had bought, this is near your neck of the woods, in Artarmon for about 900 to $1 million. Think how cheap that sounds now. And so this is back in 2010. But I just thought, okay, houses, they hadn't done barely anything, like maybe grown 100,000 in the last 5 years. And I just thought, 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house on a corner block, 26 Ks from the CBD, really good schools everywhere there. You had the Baulkham Hills Select, I think it's Martin Reed or James Rees. I'm going to get that wrong, but anyway, you know what I mean? So that was all there. So I just thought, well, this is a no-brainer. Like I was doing all of the kind of looking at all the serviceability of my income. We didn't even take my wife's or girlfriend then, I should say, sort of income into account. So it being quite risk averse. But yeah, like, and then if we go, and this has kind of been a bit of a staple really for the buyer's agency. And I was doing it subconsciously then. I'd already got a bit of knowledge on what I was doing, but I knew the property next door to me, where I bought there, it sold for 820.
Yeah, wow.
And so exactly the same spec property, and I was getting in at 689. And it was, I shouldn't really say this, but the agent wasn't very good.
Yeah. That's what you want, right?
And that's who we want to buy through, agents who kind of like a bit sort like, and the seller then, I think they'd had some personal problems, but they weren't doing proper opens. And the one thing that we saw, to your point, there was 25, to 30 groups at all the Baulkham Hill opens or anywhere in the Hills District, Winston Hills, wherever it was. And so we knew that there was a building demand, and it's something that we look at in areas, but no one could get through this property. And so we had a full run at it, and initially they wanted 720, and I just put in an offer at 650.
But there was clear demand there. You got such a great price, right?
So and that's why the agent should have been opening it up. And
crazy.
so we went into negotiation. I put in 650, and he just basically, having a joke. And I said, well, what deal? What can I get it done at? And he goes, 700. And I said, 670. Kind of. And I kind of stuck my ground, but then he goes, okay, you can get it done 689. I was like, okay, done.
Yeah.
And because I knew the other one was 820, and I was like, yeah, you beauty, basically.
It just shows the impact that getting the wrong agent to sell your property can have, right? And we should do a whole ep on that, because there's metrics and things you really got to hone in on.
Absolutely.
To make sure you get that right agent.
Yeah, buy through these type of agents. I hope he's not listening to this, by the way. And then don't sell through them.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. That set you up, right? That really gave you some momentum to keep going.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So then the important decision then was like, that we made, and I think it's one of the critical decisions that we made, is we didn't sell the Kogarah property. We then rented that out. It was about worth 600,000 then. We'd done a bit of an equity extraction from there, used that for some of the deposit for the Baulkham Hills, did a bit of debt recycling. And then we had a property portfolio. So we had the Baulkham Hills one, and then we had the Kogarah one. And then I started really educating myself a bit more, because we saw the growth in Kogarah at Baulkham Hills. And then we kind of looked at another one. We bought another one in West Sydney. So we're still saying very, very, really, staying around where we live, basically.
Yeah, you weren't venturing beyond the borders of Sydney and New South Wales, right? So
no.
Yeah, where you were comfortable.
Where we were comfortable, basically.
That was your experience at the time. That was you had the knowledge of that area.
So
why wouldn't you?
No.
It was a good part of the cycle, right? At that point in time, Sydney.
It was. It was a good time to buy in Sydney. Like it had been in the doldrums for quite a long time. It sounds crazy, like when we look back on it. But that was what was happening. And but as I sort of advanced my career, there was one guy at Goldman who was he did dabble in a bit of property, and so I tried to learn a bit from him. But he had a very different. It was the old Michael Yardney type style, like buy the best property you can close to CBD, and he sort of like was saying, try and buy in Cremorne or someone like this. And
sounds like my old man.
Yeah, well, it was a little bit like that, and he went quite hard on and was highly negatively geared back then. But he would have killed it. So good on him. But from my point of view, we didn't have serviceability was a point. I started educating myself. Talked about Munzuril, and then we've kind of found West Sydney, and we're looking at deals really anywhere between 180 to 240,000, but here with 6-7% yields, and so that's what we did. We bought in St Mary's, so it's 240,000 with a 7% yield.
It's amazing,
and I wish I'd have bought more of them.
240,000. Jeez, I wish I'd.
God, yeah.
I did more back there.
Should have backed up the truck.
Stigma of those areas, I don't know. It's just,
I know.
It was,
Well, this is a story, and I've talked about it on a few pods where I was looking to get the next one. So it was in Lethbridge Park.
Yeah.
And I had it on the screen at Goldman, and we had 3 or 4 screens or whatever it was back then. And a couple of the vol traders, the option traders, saw me what I was looking at, and they were like, "What are you doing? You lose all your money, blah blah blah," and hammered into me, and that kind of stopped me. And so I didn't buy another one then. But that would be. The St Mary's one's now worth 850 to 900.
Back then, you didn't have a huge amount of experience in property investing, but what was going through your mind? Why did you see that property is something you wanted to get into? Was there a particular metric that you saw? Was it a gut instinct? Was it who you were surrounding yourself with?
It became the investor's instinct that you could actually see that this was just an absolute no-brainer. You could because the lending rules were a bit different then. This was pre-APRA. So it meant that you could keep basically just getting the property, buying under market if you could, doing a quick, reno, and then extracting the equity and going again. And there was no limit to how many times you could do that. And so technically it was a very replicable strategy. Like, serviceability is a component, but not as much then. And so it was really my, sitting down with my accountant then, Munzuril, and really looking at what we could do. And we kind of hashed this out. And so that's when we sort of had to sit down and we started to work out, okay, to your point, like, what was I doing? I didn't really know what I was doing till then. But when we did that purchase, it was like, what's the end goal? What are we trying to get to? And in that point, we were kind of looking at, okay, paid off PPOR, 100K in passive income. And so we needed 500,000 to pay off the loan on Porkham Hills. And then we needed to construct, say, a $2 million portfolio. Or get 2 million in equity, and at say a 5% gross yield, that gives you 100,000. So that's kind of what we started to work towards. And so the St Mary's property and the Corridor property were the first cogs in that. And that put us up to about an $800,000 portfolio, once St Mary's was purchased. And so we're off at the races. So then the idea was to try and, build that as much as we could. And
so this is where you really decided that you're all in on property, right? This was your avenue to financial freedom. It
was, and I'd heavily educated myself on value investing. I think and technical trade. I used to love it. I used to read everything about all the top traders in the world, all the technical analysis stuff. So I knew everything about the turtles. I won't go into the turtle traders and the turtle experiment. It's such an interesting, if you look at it, John Henry, Richard Dennis, all of that stuff. Very interesting stuff. Value investing, how Warren Buffett did everything. But it's quite simply, when you're at Goldman and you're a strategy, property strats comes from like, a strategist and being an equity strat as I was then. If you can see all the order flow from the top hedge funds in the world, then it makes it very hard to do stock. But quite simply, even though that said, when I looked at the returns you could get from property,
leverage returns, right?
Leverage returns as compared to sort of stock, the barometer is how many people do you know has made serious wealth through stock in Australia compared to property. And I can think of The
opposites in America. The opposites in America.
Opposite in America, yeah. I can rail off 10 names very quickly in property and keep going after that.
It's just part of the culture here, right? It's just, it's always been like that. So
it is. And so that was really the idea. So, and then with Goldman, because I can see all the order flow, you have to go through like control rooms and compliance checks on everything you do. It's just too hard basket. So it's much easier just to keep doing the property game.
So geography was a key decision, right? So you're thinking about Sydney. You're looking at Sydney being earlier on in its growth cycle. So that formed a big part of your decision. Yeah, and you went all in on that, knowing that there's a good sustainable period ahead of growth, right? That was the key geography lesson for that.
It was really then becoming a borderless buyers, not borderless buyer, but borderless investor, if you will, because like we'd hit Sydney. Yep. Sydney then started growing. Yeah. And so Baulkham Hills then went bananas. Yeah. And actually St Mary's and the whole of West Sydney went up to 400. Yeah. And it's always like, because people listening to this, like when you're in the moment and you've seen an asset almost double, right? People will say, well, that's still cheap, 400, 500. And you are right. And but psychologically, it's quite hard to buy that asset. So this is when we start kind of looking at being a borderless investor. And then we started looking at where there's value across. And the two areas that we looked at there, you had Brisbane and Logan. But I also personally thought Melbourne was extremely undervalued, and it was. So we started looking down in Melbourne, and Melbourne was at the start of the cycle, and we're kind of looking at deals around that sort of around 7-8 Ks out from the CBD, so like Pascoe Vale South and your Brunswicks, and you could get houses on 450 to 500,000 then. God. And so I think the same ones would be about 1 mil to 1.5 maybe, and that's even cheap now, but that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. But really, kind of this is the start of the cycle being borderless, but looking at buying at the start of market cycles and really having buy and hold. And so we did actually engage a buyer's agent there to get us a property. And we were kind of looking at a development type play. And I'm not as successful as
what year was
yourself.
This roughly?
This was 2011, 12. And so we were kind of going to adopt my broker strategy. And the way he got the passive income of 400K is he just went bananas with a joint venture with a business partner and just bought up Brisbane. They'd knock down their house, they'd build 3, sell 2, and then they basically pay off the loan on the other one and just kept going and going. Yep. And so the idea was to try and do something like that down in Melbourne. And we found this property, I think it was 400 and, God, I can't even remember now, 440,000 or so in Pascoe Vale South. And it unfortunately was a bit of a wreck, but we thought we could have rented out for about 300 to 350 a week. Buyer's agent didn't do their due diligence on that particular one. And so when we went down there to look at the property, we couldn't get through, but the buyer's agent said, no, it's fine. But the more we sort of peeled back into that, we realized that there were more and more problems with that. But anyway, I guess the point is that had we bought a property you could rent, like we would have, if we were still holding that now, that property would have done, maybe at least 2x, but at least maybe 3x. So that was kind of, but I think the important point here is getting that done. We weren't scared to go sort of outside of our neighborhood anymore. Yeah. We're happy to look at other areas. So we're off and running there and really started trying to push towards that end goal I talked about, which was trying to get the portfolio value up to 2 mil.
And you still haven't liquidated any assets at this point in time, right? You've held everything?
We actually liquidated the Cogra property. Actually after this one.
The Melbourne one?
So we got the Melbourne one through.
Yep.
And then I think about like I do remember the reason for doing it. So Cogra got to like about that $800,000 mark. I got the council rates through, and then I saw there was a rezoning change in Cogra, and basically to high rise, and I just knew there was going to be loads of high rises built around. So we just thought we've got to get out. We've got to get out here. Yeah. We had the capital gains threshold, free threshold. Yeah. Actually, asset pod in its own, but we had a few things because we had a primary place of residence in Baulkham Hills. We had to do a mark-to-market before we bought that. Right. And so there was a bit of capital gains component, but I think it worked out to be about 15 to 20K when we sold that. So we sold it for $787,000. Okay. Only 6 years after we bought it, which is amazing. So we had sold down that particular property, kind of reduced the debt, but then that enabled us to go to our next purchases. And this is where about 2013, 14, We had the Melbourne property. We actually decided to sell that.
In after a couple of years?
Yeah, because we couldn't rent it out. It needed about 100 to 150,000 reno.
Yep.
And so that was probably the first big mistake that we made. And we were kind of hemorrhaging cash flow. It wasn't on big income then. And we wanted to go more set and forget. And that's when So
when you say the biggest mistake you made, why was that? Because the growth that experienced after that point?
I think no. The biggest, it wasn't anything to do with like the actual property itself. Everything was sound.
Yeah, okay.
I think the biggest mistake really was not keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And so just keeping the same asset, like the West Sydney one, like had we got an asset we hit the market at the right time, we hit the cycle. But if something could have rented and was in half decent condition, we would have killed it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's really where
it's such an important lesson, isn't it?
It is.
Once you know what works, don't deviate from it.
It is, and that really pulls us into the second point, which is like that kind of like the buy and hold equity. Holding equity, and this is actually quite pivotal because it did affect the confidence. You know, my wife, we were kind of starting to plan the family, just got married. The cash flow was killing us. And this is actually my broker who is my mentor. We're trying to replicate a strategy. And this is where you've got to align the strategy with kind of like the investor and really developing. We couldn't replicate that strategy to get to the passive income numbers that he did. So I was a bit down about things. But I still educate myself, like we're talking about endurance and, you know, kicking through and just keeping going.
Persistence, right?
Persistence, yeah. And I saw this, not ad actually, but it was actually a post on Somersoft. And it was this young gun guy called Michael Shah. And he's since become a very good friend. And he put a little post out, and it was so simple, and it was just exactly what I'd started doing, and he was doing the same sort of strategy I was doing in West Sydney. There was a few of us from that particular time who didn't know each other, which is the irony, and we would just come. But he just kept it straightforward, and he started buying in Newcastle, then went up to Logan, started doing the same sort of things. Whereas I started doing that, then I started messing around with development. I still thought Melbourne was the right play then, and I was right on the cycle. But I just saw his simplicity, and he bought 10 to 12 properties, I think, in Logan at that particular time, and built a $3 million portfolio. That's just how cheap the properties were in Logan then. You know?
That was around 2014.
That was 13, 14,
Didn't do much from that point though, did it? From there to 2021.
It didn't, no, but we weren't to know this, exactly. And this is the important point.
Yes.
So we actually then pivoted our strategy. I was looking for a new broker. We changed, and Michael had just he detailed his kind of strategy out there, but he was setting up his brokerage house. So I got to know Michael a little bit. But we started pivoting like towards that same strategy that we did in West Sydney again. And we started buying, keep it simple. And we started buying in Logan. And you are right, we were very early into the cycle, but at the time, I always remember like we're thinking like, okay, it's going to be Brisbane's year. Okay. 2015, it's going to be Brisbane's year.
I remember speaking to so many investors over that period of time, and everyone was just absolutely cracking it. So many people left too. They were just like, no, I'm done.
It was so this is the funny thing.
So frustrating.
Because we see this, we're seeing the parallels in Melbourne now. And so we know, like, because Melbourne hasn't grown for a while. But if we go back to that particular period now, the one mistake I made with my two Logan purchases, they were side by side. Near the station in a newly zoned area, 800 square meters each. And so we could put apartments on there, could put townhouses on them. But we paid over the odds to get them because they were side by side. So 410,000 each. Yeah. But the comparables then, like, were selling between 230 and 300. So 410 in 2025 sounds dirt cheap.
But back then
it was bloody expensive. And the vals came in about 320, 330. So we had to tip in equity to get these deals. And so it wasn't the classic sort of strategy that we were using in West Sydney. It was, we were going for, again, the land banking type play. And so we had to wait a little bit of time really for the market to catch up. But like you're saying, 2000, like it's going to be Brisbane's year. And so that actually became quite hard. But really the market conditions at that time were vacancy rates were quite high.
Really?
They're about 4 or 5% in Logan, because a lot of investors were thinking the same thing. They saw the gains that were made in West Sydney, and chased the Logan dream or the Moreton Bay dream. And all the team around me were doing the same sort of thing.
So you were a bit of an outlier going to Melbourne, weren't you?
I was a big outlier. Yeah, it was a big outlier, but it was a good call. Looking back, I remember Bentley. For like really good suburb in Melbourne, almost doubling like in the space, and that's kind of what we were looking to do, and we would have hit that.
So you went to Logan, and what was it about Logan that everyone was seeing at the time? Just the price points, right?
Well, it was the cash flow. Flow. So you get houses close to. It was the rhetoric about Southeast Queensland, and it's still going on now. Like we're obviously in one part of Southeast Queensland in Burleigh. It stretches all the way up to the Sunshine Coast. All of the sort of money going into that, but what it boils down to is just keeping it simple, stupid. Buying properties, houses on decent plots of land, low 200,000s, 6-7% yields, holding, and that's why it was so attractive to investors. And hindsight, my wife still tells me this. She said, "Why didn't we buy all of them? Why did we mess around with the?" I mean, it's come good now, but I totally get it. And it was really hooking up with the broker at the time, Michael, and sort of seeing that particular strategy.
So they had massive. They had a significant influence on you, right?
They did, like pivoting the strategy to this equity model. So now we're looking at buy and hold. So if we kind of look at trying then to because the more sort of cash flow, it's a fruitcake mix. I've talked about this a few times on pods where sometimes you need capital growth, sometimes you need cash flow. Here you got them both. Even though we were early to the party, we knew we could keep buying and buying and buying and buying, and that was the idea. The problem was APRA came into the mix in 2015 and 16, and then all of a sudden put the buffer on, and so it became harder to do that particular strategy. But the idea really was to build a $3 million, $4 million property portfolio, quite easy to hold, and just keep on to that. So last, when we talked about your strategy, you were timing and potentially getting out of cycles. My idea was to try and build the portfolio. Then I knew if I had a $3 million portfolio and it went up 10%, I made 300 in sort of passive income or passive wealth creation, whatever you want to call it. And I knew that all the people around me, whether it's the head of like Goldman, then if it was the MD. Maybe the MD's a bit different if you're on the trading floor. If it's the MD, say in IT or whatever, by doing nothing, my wealth creation is going far beyond him.
Exactly.
And that was a real light bulb moment for me. It was like, well, what if I get that to 500? 5 mil, that's 500. 10 mil, 1 million.
And that's where the snowball and the compound effect starts to really kick in, and that's where the magic happens, right?
Well, that's it. That's it. And that was all. The idea then was always to get as many assets as we could, and we never sell. And we just wanted to keep getting up and up. As time's gone on, we've had to shift that sort of strategy because of like lending rules and whatnot. But
so you held these strong. You held them strong into the next growth cycle of Brisbane.
We still got them. In fact, we bought.
So that would have tested you.
No, it was
from the period you bought them. I mean, you had the cash flow, right? But you just weren't seeing the growth for a fairly long period of time, right? That's where the persistence pays.
Well, that's it, Tom. The cash flow wasn't there. So they were cash flow plays, but because we bought the development assets at 410 each, they were renting for 300. And so the yield's more 4% or so. So they did become quite hard to hold. But again, we did go back to simplicity, but we still did overcomplicate it. Maybe you could say rather than other sort of contemporaries just buying all the $230,000 properties. We still did that, but again, like that put the portfolio value up to about, I think, 4 million at that particular time. And so we were still doing well. And I did something a bit about my everyone talks about rent vesting, and I totally get rent vesting and why it's important. But we were kind of always big on this owner-occupier type strategy that we did. The Balcombe Hills property had doubled. And then we sold that and moved down to Melbourne ourselves, and we bought a property half the price, but we got our non-deductible debt down from 500,000 then to about 150 by buying well.
So
and so freed us up. So it was all about getting the non-deductible debt down and then building the investment property portfolio out.
So you doubled your Cogra almost, then you doubled your Balcombe Hills. And then you did okay out of the Melbourne one. Albeit it wasn't the right time.
No, but we sold it down.
And then you moved into Brisbane at 410 each.
Yep, 410 each. Yep.
And you at this stage a $4 million portfolio in total.
So yeah, it was about maybe 3.5 to 4 mil portfolio.
Okay.
We had about 1.2 million in debt, I think it was then.
Okay.
So we had a fairly healthy LVR, about 30 to 40, and sort of and then sort of like, you know, life takes its turn. We had our only son, I should say, and so really the focus was to just to build the family. We decided to enjoy the more Aussie lifestyle, so we moved down to Melbourne. We wanted to be nearer the beach. Goldman, I transferred down from Sydney to Melbourne at that particular time, but then I actually decided to leave the investment banking world and go to the buy side and work for Australian Super. But the idea was then to take as you can imagine, Goldman's a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like, and I think it was a Brexit situation and the futures market that tipped me over the edge, and I decided to come out of that and then go into sort of more sort of easier type, so I could spend more time with the family, spend a bit more time about golfing, and then just try and take it a bit easier. Sort of like, you know, we're getting okay sort of rental.
And you're building up a good equity base at this point in time.
Equity base was great. Yeah.
Fantastic.
But what we found was, because I took a bit of a haircut on the wage, when we did that was because we had so much equity to deploy that the serviceability wasn't there, and then all of a sudden that's when APRA was kicking in, and that was a real pain, and we circled around a few brokers, but Michael was the one, and we were able to sort of use him to get one more purchases down in Melbourne, then Reservoir. So so instead of like,
so you went to Brisbane, then back to Melbourne again.
And went back to Melbourne
Set
again.
And forget.
Yeah. So again, we were gonna really go, because we didn't have much serviceability, and right or wrong, we were really going to try and knock it out of the park with a capital growth type play. Hindsight, we should have stayed in Brisbane and kept buying. But again, to your point, it became quite hard because he had no growth in Brisbane at that time. It took 4 years when we bought this one. And we were kind of looking at a number of areas that had been rezoned to residential growth areas. And we bought one in Reservoir for 840,000.
So that wouldn't have helped you with your cash flow though, right?
No, it
Given
didn't.
the yield at the time?
It didn't. But kind of when we modelled it out with the broker, we couldn't really do a lot.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to go for a capital growth. And I'm going to be quite transparent. This was a mistake. But again, the idea was okay. We could again still got an eye on the development and trying to get that working. We knew that we could put 5 townhouses on there. And so I was potentially going to do a joint venture, I was talking about the mistake on the first one.
So you hadn't learned your lesson on the original one? I
hadn't learned a
right?
lesson,
okay.
no. So I thought, okay, you could make this happen. I had a good joint venture partner, and we were umming and ahhing. I did the plans and everything. And this is probably the most pivotal time in it. So I got to know Mark, he's shaking his head. Well, why aren't you keeping it simple? And then sort of like we'd made one more move from Melbourne up to Brisbane at this particular time. My family didn't settle in Melbourne,
right?
Again, but we'd had when we sold the Balcombe Hills property to buy and have no debt in Mount Eliza, which is where we were living there, which is near Frankston in the Mornington Peninsula. That made really good equity gains, and then we were able to sort of like when we moved up to Brizzy, we bought a property outright at 1,090,000. From all the kind of funds that we had
to live in.
This is our PPOR we're still in at the moment. It's now worth 2.5, which is crazy. But anyway, the idea was to have the Reservoir one as a development play, and it was really, this was the big moment. So we're in Brisbane now, in this job in Q Super. I've talked about this a few times, and I was just kind of like there, just trying to make ends meet a little bit. Had a really bad head of division come in. It was a toxic environment, and I just thought, and I looked at our portfolio. We had the Reservoir property.
So what was that now at this point in time? So you were 4 before you went to Melbourne, then you got Reservoir, and then you were back into Brisbane. What was the total value? So
it would have been about, I've got to get this right because we have properties sold and everything, but I think net, like off the top of my head, it would have been about 4.5.
4.5, okay.
And that's kind of what, and when we looked at it, and it's still about 1.3 million in loans. And then I sort of, I had this pivotal moment. I was like, I can't do this job anymore. I've kind of we've done really well out of property, but it did take my eyes off the prize, if you will, for a few years, because it was more about sort of got really into golf and got really into sort of like my career and everything. I didn't really think too much about the property. It was doing well and I thought it was good. But really was quite confronting to me was, again, he's been quite a big figure in my life for the last 10 years, was Michael Shah. And I saw that his Brisbane portfolio all of a sudden was now 10 million. And so I called him up and I just said, "Fuck, bloody hell!" And again, he just kept it simple, stupid the whole way through.
Logan, right?
And there was me just buying in Logan, and I was there
Still
doing
trying
all
to
of
do
these
developments,
doing these development sites.
Good
and
lesson.
And it was it was a massive lesson. And this is probably
far less stress too, I'd imagine.
It's far less stress too. So the first big decision point was renting the Cogra. Now this was the big second decision point was okay, I got him to model out 2 scenarios for me. If we keep the reservoir property, what can we do? Because my wife had started working again at this point. So we had serviceability. Or if we sell it, what can we do? And so he modeled it out. If we kept it, we could do maybe 1 or 2. And this is how we could do the development. If we sold it, then we could buy 10 to 12 properties because of the serviceability and all the equity that we had up. And so I ummed and ahed at it, and I thought, okay, well, if I buy under market value for 10 to 12 properties, that's 1 million to 1,200,000 with no risk. Or if I do the development, it could completely screw up in my face. But the best case scenario is I'll pick up 250. So it was a no-brainer. So we then sold the reservoir property for 1,050,000.
And then piled into...
And went on a complete buying spree.
Into Logan.
Yeah. And so for that equity model, then the idea was to try and get the portfolio up to sort of 8 to 9 million as quick as we could.
This is where it really started to take off.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And what year was this?
This was 2019.
Oh, perfect. Just before the
Brizzy boom.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we went bananas. Like I was kind of so determined to get out of work then.
Yeah.
And we just went. We sort of.
So how many did you buy? And they would have all been around the 200,000-300,000 mark. Is that what the prices were at that point?
Yeah. Oh no, they weren't. So it was about 8 or 9 we ended up buying.
8 or 9, yeah.
So what we did, so we modelled out a scenario where every purchase was 500,000, renting for 500 a week. Yeah. But what we did is we bent that a little bit because we wanted to get into slightly better areas. Okay. So we bought one up in Moreton Bay in a suburb called Griffin. Yep. We then went down. We bought a duplex down in Goodna. Mm-hmm. And that particular time, like Brisbane was moving. Like all of my properties in Logan Lee now were kind of around that $600,000 mark. Yeah. Griffin had moved quite a lot before we bought there, but that's since done really well. The Goodna property duplex has killed it. Mm-hmm. But this is where sort of like we moved to Perth, and we got in and started buying in Perth in 2021. Yeah. We bought 4 properties there, but rather than buying in sort of Mandurah, we actually did buying one. We wanted to get into slightly higher socioeconomic areas, so we bought quite close to the city in an area called Naranda. Yeah. We bought in Queen's Rock. We bought one in Rockingham, and then we bought one in Mandurah in Dudley Park. So that was all in the space of about 6 months.
So overall, the major mistakes you've made so far is deviating from the set and forget type scenarios, right? But in terms of entering the markets at the right time, every one of those opportunities, you've done that correctly.
Well, I have. You think Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's the one thing I have nailed.
Those mistakes, really, didn't they?
It did. And that's why it's absolutely critical. So we're obviously very good at timing what market we're in. Mm-hmm. But what it should have done is just keep it simple, stupid. And then basically I was then able 2 years after doing this to quit the rat race if I wanted to. Yep. I actually, because I'm a POM, as you like to call me, was conditioned to that I've got to keep working for people. Yeah. So I kept doing that a lot longer than I could, but I knew I could then get out. And then funny enough, all the people I worked with, they kind of like got the bullet, so to speak. Yeah. And so all
those naysayers that were saying to you not to do this and what you're doing, how'd they react to what you ended up achieving?
I remember being down a pub in Brisbane down. I was a big. It's since I've quit corporate, I've stopped drinking. Right. So down the old Vic in Brizzy. And I remember talking to them. It was around the COVID time. Yeah. And I just said, I'm going to buy like 10 to 12 properties in the next, and they all started laughing. They didn't take it seriously, but I was like, well, I'll show you. And we did, but we didn't buy that many because we bought in slightly higher, socioeconomic areas with decent yields. Yeah. And then we kept going. And then we got the portfolio value up very quickly to 8 million, and then we pushed a bit more to 9, and then natural equity growth has now seen that to 11.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, it was. I just again kicked myself. I should have just done this. Done this
we all say it.
way earlier, and just really simple. And then that enabled me to then. I decided to quit the corporate life in 2023.
And you started
property strats, but I clearly it was a very anticlimactic moment because I'd hit this financial freedom mark.
What do I do now?
And it's like, and I was playing golf, and I always tell the story that I had nothing to do, and there's 2 things happened actually, and I just turned on the TV because there's nothing to do. My wife was in China at the moment, or at that time, and I was flicking the channels, and WrestleMania was on.
Hulk Hogan. Psycho Sid.
Hulk Hogan, all of that. God rest his soul. But exactly. I had nothing else to do, and I was watching it, and I just thought, this is crazy. I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like watching, I don't know if it's WrestleMania or frigging Days of Our Lives or whatever it's going to be. And equally, I couldn't play golf every day, so I needed to do something. And so that was the kick up the behind. And Michael again said, you know, do broking, do buyer's agency, but just do something.
Yeah, and all the experience and education you gained, it would have been stupid not to, right?
Well, it's hard. Like when you leave Goldman Sachs, they used to, like the term is you're Goldmanized because you're kind of so entrenched in that way of working, and it takes a long time to sort of rip that out of you. But it's a bit like your story we're talking about last week, because you performed at these sort of levels, and then you've built this portfolio. You're not someone who's just going to do nothing. And that's kind of what I was trying to do. And then I was just thinking, what can I do? Buyer's agency was a natural route. I didn't want to do broking because it would be more of the kind of, it's not similar to investments, but you're going to be paper pushers. And so doing this and putting deals together, you know, we're talking this morning about how exciting it is putting a deal together for a client. We love it because every time you're buying a property, it's like you get that buzz.
Yeah, exactly.
It's addictive. Like if it's for yourself, you're seeing someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's quite easy to pivot into that. So we've done that now, and I suppose we come to that final sort of like a third call now, which we're living at the moment, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So and really this is now the pivot to commercial. And you're a bit of an influence on me here as well, because
you didn't think about it before we met, or always in the back of your mind?
No, it's in the back of the mind. So there's 2 types of assets. So I'm going to be quite transparent. I don't think this is talked about a lot. So we do hear some pretty amazing stories from amazing buyers agents and mortgage brokers and investors out there. But really kind of like it's growing businesses have enabled them to get to where they've got to. It's not the PAYG. PAYG, you can do well, but you get to a certain level and you can't, because serviceability then holds you back. You can't, like, I mean, pushing to an 11
million
on PAYG.
That's amazing. Shows the importance of having the right people surrounding you, right? Because you wouldn't have got that with the right broker.
No, exactly. And other people who've hit that mark, you need the right broker, to your point. But they might be doing moonlighting for another job. It might be Uber driving, even buyer's agency or whatever it might be. But there's some extra supplemental income to help them. And there's no right or wrong about that. But it really goes to show using a good broker and that knowledge, that's kind of how we're able to do that.
Accountant too several times. It's critical, right?
Critical, yeah. And the broker. But really we hit that friction point. And unless we sort of, you know, become a head of now, in which I'm not going to, I hadn't have any ambition to really get to that 300,000 a year, now 350,000 a year sort of salary, like, and all the stress that would come, that would take you away from building that portfolio. So it's really sort of, that's not an option anymore to be able to get to say 12, 15 million in PAYG anymore. And so now we go to the level up period in commercial. Obviously setting the business up, we're helping Australians every day build that wealth through PAYG. But from my point, I'm going to be quite transparent. Obviously, growing a business then helps me sort of build the portfolio as well. And because I'm getting on to 50 soon, we want to start scaling into more cash flow assets. I don't think it's right if I keep building a resi portfolio and buying properties for clients to then have a conflict of interest while I'm buying. Because you've got that thing where you might be cherry picking the good deals for yourself.
Exactly.
I want the clients to get the big deals, and that's important for me. But because we're pivoting to that time of life where we want more cash flow, it makes sense to go commercial. And so we're currently doing that big refinance. 18 millions is where we're going to when the next couple of purchases are going to get done.
Yep.
And I think like hearing your...
What are you thinking commercial-wise?
Well, hearing your knockout story, so about your purchase, was it Redcliffe, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, a shopping village in Redcliffe. Love the neighbourhood shopping villages.
So that was 5 mil, wasn't it?
Can't go wrong with them, yeah.
5 mil shot, and sort of after all
roughly
expenses.
Roughly about 5 mil now, yeah.
Roughly 5 mil. After all expenses, what are you taking home a year?
Oh, geez, you put me on the spot there. It's well over 130,000 at the moment, net income. Okay. Obviously, I've got levers if I want to liquidate some resi assets and reduce that debt. But overall, I think the overall income is just under 300,000 off the complex net income. So so it's huge.
So that's amazing. And I think the way that we're kind of looking at it is to get something like that.
Yeah.
And because we can, like our LVR at the moment, so if we look at the portfolio, just when we're doing the refinance at the moment, sort of we've got about 3 million, or I think it is, or so that we're going to extract, and then we're going to do sort of kind of, I always get the name wrong. I think it's lease stock loans. Yep. So we're going to put big money in from our equity base, and then lend the rest. So basically each loan will be done on its own sort of merit. And there's two types of assets that we're looking at. There's talked about the shopping villages like yourself, but then also unit blocks as well. Yeah, okay. So a lot of pods I've talked about the value of units in Sydney. Yep. The only thing that I think is more valuable is getting the block themselves, because then like Costco buy in bulk, and you can make money on all of these ones. So there you get the cash flow and then the equity growth. So we're looking to pivot into those two and really level up into the next level of investing, and then go quite hard to sort of see if we can then get to 20 mil and then start trying to catch you, Tom. There you go. Yeah.
So with all your resis, what are your plans with them? Are you going to stick with them, or you liquidate any more, or what? What are you thinking there?
We're looking to hold them all, as it stands at the moment. I think the ones that we've got in Logan. So because we now got three in, because we did come back to Brisbane, we got the third one. So we've got 3 properties in a row on the street. We probably should rename the street. I'm not that up myself to do that. But we could pick up another one in the area. But you've got the option to put apartments on there. But going back to the mistake, I'm not going to do that this time. There's potentially another rezone that's going to happen, I think, in that area. If that happens, these properties could be worth 5 mil. I think that's the one asset we could divest.
5 million?
At the moment, they're 3 if we sold them together. But if they change the zoning and you could build up maybe 2...
They were the 2 410s. Were they the 2 properties?
Yeah, two of 410. Yeah.
Wow. So you're saying they're worth what now? 3? Well, if it could be worth 5 if the zoning changes.
If they were sold individually, they'd sell between 850 and 900. Yeah. An agent, if we sold them as a pack, you would be able to get 3 mil.
Yeah, wow.
And I've been told that from multiple agents. So if we then had another rezoning change, you could build up another 2 levels. So instead of you could do 3 level apartments on there at the moment. Yeah, wow. So if you could do 5 level or whatever, obviously it's almost double the number. And so I'm not saying it. I mean, it probably won't go to 5. Yeah. But if it did go well past that 3 to 4, then I think there's an argument there to divest those assets. Wow. The others I think will hold.
Yeah. Okay. So you got plenty of options.
Well,
right?
Exactly. And if we did divest that, then that money would just get reinvested into probably commercial again. Yeah, and then really trying to get that
cash flow.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're able to do that, for example, at the moment we could pull. If we sold those, it'd be 1.5 at the moment. Mm-hmm. But if we could get a bit more lift, and we'll go in an episode about Brizzy soon. Obviously, the Olympics coming. I think the area is going to keep doing well. But if we got 4 mil mark or whatever, again, there's several options. Like on a 30% lend, 35% lend, we can get another sort of shopping village maybe. If you can find me one, that'd be awesome.
Happy to, mate. I love them. They're such good assets because they, I've got 10, 11 tenants in mine, and it's just the security of that income, right? If one leaves, you've got 9 or 10 others that'll sit there and pay the rent for you. So, that localised shopping village, the people love them, and get some medical assets in there at the same time, tenant-wise. It's
you've just got some
amazing opportunities.
You've had some crackers recently, and you just look at them, and I think you just get to a time where in your life, and it's, again, I'm just talking about keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And we've kept it simple, and that's all good. And we could do the same thing, and that's fine. But I think at this particular time, like, it makes sense to now level up, because we've got the knowledge and we know that the where we're trying to get to. Our goals have changed to where I was when I was 30 and 40 years old. Now they're just a little bit different. Yeah. And so this totally makes sense to get to the next level. Yeah. And I think you've got to have end goals. Obviously, going back to the
so what is it? Where is it? Where does this all end for you in terms of your end goal for property? You got your business objectives, which I know they're huge. Yeah. And you're well on your way to achieving those. But from your property, what do you want to? Where do you want that value to sit in 10 years' time?
Well, we knocked it out of the park. That the plan we did in 2010. We did it in about 2016 or something like that. Yeah. And so that was awesome. So now, I mean, it's important. I think everyone, if you can just pull out from this pod, have that end goal in mind, because that you've got to be laser focused to get to there. So for ourselves, God, it's a good question, Tom. Like, I think
go as hard as you can and just see where it ends up.
Well, I think we do want to move out of Brisbane. Yeah. So that's a personal goal where we want to sort of either go. I want to go to Noosa. My wife wants to come here to the Goldie, as we were talking about before. Yeah. And so we're going to work out where that is going to be. Yeah, okay. But I think I want to get 1 million in passive at some point. Yeah. Wow. So build that, and I think that's a big. So obviously, portfolio numbers is a bit arbitrary. Whatever gives you to that 1 million mark. Yep. But I think if we can get to that sort of 20 to 25 mil mark, sort of. Within the next 3 to 4 years, that'll be awesome. Yeah. And then just see where it lands. Okay. I think from a personal point of view, health wise, we've done a lot of work there. We had some awful news this week of fellow buyer's agent, and his name was Rod, unfortunately passed, and so just again it shows how short life is. Yeah. And it was heartbreaking hearing that decision. So. Focusing on the health is important, and obviously seeing my son do well. Those are two big personal goals for myself. But from finance point of view, it does become a bit like a game almost, but getting that ultra good passive income is going to be really important to me. Yeah. If we can push the portfolio to sort of like multi-million, 50 million or whatever, that would be great. But I don't have massive ambitions to do that. I think what we've got already is going to be more than sufficient. So
fantastic.
I think from myself, from a business point of view, seeing clients grow and being able to quit the rat race and have that option where they can go, screw you to your boss. That actually gives me a bit of a kick now as well. Yeah. So not so much about Steve Ash anymore. Yeah. It's more about my family, my son, and then the clients really just seeing that they can get to their goals, and that gives me quite a big kick, and we work tirelessly on that, and so portfolio goals there, but seeing people get to that same sort of mark, and for most people, they don't need to do this. They can just they don't need $1 million.
Might be 150,000,
150, 200,000. Exactly. It doesn't. It's not that complicated. Yeah, we can show you how to do that. Yeah. Buy, build welfare resi, use commercial. Divest to commercial to get that passive income. So, I know there's other people that, got the mission statements there, but I think seeing more and more people do that, I mean, it does give me a big kick. And I know it gives you a big kick now because we were talking about it this morning.
It absolutely does, yeah. Well, mate, that is amazing, that story. And from where you've started to where you are now and where you want to go, really inspiring stuff.
Thank you.
The big theme was persistence, right? So you made some mistakes along the way, but you stuck it out and you continued on the journey and ended up paying dividends in the end. So, and it wouldn't have come without a lot of commitment and delayed gratification. I know I've heard the pickle sandwich story that you didn't want to buy your lunch. You were eating pickles and cheese sandwiches for a
long
few
time.
years. Yeah, for a long time. So you didn't mention any of that stuff, but that's an important point, right? Well, you've got to really commit to it. It doesn't come easy, but it's worth it in the end.
Well, it is. I mean, we still got, I told you, we still got a Ford Fiesta.
Yeah.
which has been a bit of
I'm waiting for the Lambo to rock up. You can get one. I don't know why you don't.
No, we can do, but we're actually going to do. We're funny enough, like a little social media post on the Fiesta because it's really become quite charming. It was funny enough, like he's still a buddy of mine at Goldman, and he's now an MD in Hong Kong. He still sends me messages like, you know, how's the Fiesta doing, because he sold it to me. And it's got a bit of sun damage there, but it's really been a beacon for us, like on kind of what we sacrificed. See, everyone wants what you've got. You know, what you've done. Oh, they want what I've got, but they don't go through, you know, the heartache, you know, the problems and like the India-Rapilli property, like you talked about, etc., or kind of like the mistake, you know, I made in Melbourne. But then it's all the persistence, all the loan docs you've got to do. And but they want the end goal without doing. It's like getting the abs. You know, they want the 6-minute abs or
instant
whatever it is. Instant gratification.
And most people would have sold out of those properties in Brisbane. You got after a few years, right? They would have looked at the vals. They weren't coming back where they needed to. Or wanted them to be, but you stuck it out for a good 5-6 years before the market kicked in again. So it's those sort of things you got to commit to and stay true to, and it'll end up going your way in the end.
Well, I know a big time name out there, who basically was buying a lot for people in Brisbane, and he tapped out. I told him not to.
Too early.
He tapped out too early.
Yeah, wow.
And he tapped out before the boom. And
what, 2018 or?
Yeah. No, so it is important. Like this game is easy as anything. We know kind of like how to get you there. The hardest thing is the mindset and being able to do that. And it's prevalent in yourself. Because you know that there's going to be dramas with a property that's put in front of you, but you know that that's going to get you to X amount. I mean, like some of the numbers that you've got in your own portfolio, absolutely astonishing. If I think about, we still hold this North St Mary's property. It's now worth $850. I think West Sydney's maybe got a bull run coming. We've got Badgerys Creek Airport.
Indeed.
And so you can put duplex on there. But again, I won't do that. I'm going to keep it simple. There's already enough growth in that particular property. And so I'm pumped to keep doing that, and I'm pumped to see people getting just amazing results as well. And so that's where we're at.
Mate, awesome. You can see how passionate you are for both your own portfolio and also your customers. And mate, as I said, awesome to break that down and go through that, and some awesome lessons that I've learned from that too. And the biggest one is just commit to the strategy and just what you know works, stick with it. Don't try to deviate from it to try to make a quick buck.
No, that's it. And I think if there's one last thing that I just add on all of this, and everyone talks about compound growth in your portfolio. And that's absolutely critical. You need compounding, the eighth wonder of the world and everything. But it's also the compounding in your own mindset and being able to do the small things day to day, and you don't think anything's happening, but doing the same repeated actions, buying the same property, even if there's resistance there, even if people are saying to you around the barbecue, oh, you know, then buy in Logan, don't buy in like Perth or whatever it is. Just keep doing that.
If I listened to all of them, I would not be anywhere near I am right now. It's so easy to get sucked into it, right?
It is. It's so easy to get sucked into it. Especially when it comes from
a close friend or a family member. You really think about it, right?
It holds sway. It holds sway.
It does, yeah.
So it's that compounding effect that you do each day, you know, just has such big parallels. So compounding happens in all different walks of life, and I think it's that mindset.
Exactly. And you know, you hear these people talk about, you know, property's a 30-year game, and it is a long-term game, right? But it doesn't have to be 30 years. You can go make some great money in a much shorter period of time if you play the strategy right, you ride the cycles, you enter in the right time, you exit at the right time, and ultimately you partner with the right buyer's agency, the right mortgage broker, and have the right accountant. You get the right partners in place, it can happen a lot quicker than 30 years, I can tell you.
Well, it's osmosis, because we just talked about all the mistakes that you made. Talked about all the mistakes I've made. So you work with the professionals, they can stop you making those mistakes.
Exactly.
And you can fast track those sort of goals. There's always a market. And there's always a market in Australia.
Absolutely.
And there's always a market within that market that's going to outperform. And so I think, you know, keeping it simple, stupid, it's boring, like, you know, and that's kind of why people deviate like I did to developing, or they deviate to whatever sort of strategy. So Absolutely. So it's really good to go through the story.
Mate, we could talk about this all day, but that is awesome. Thanks so much. And what's the next potty? What are we talking about next? Another hotspot?
We're going to go back into the hotspots. We're going to talk more. We're going to talk
Maybe
a
Brisbane,
little bit.
did we say?
We're going to talk about Brizzy soon. Yeah. We're going to talk about more in Melbourne, more in Perth.
Yep.
Talk about some more regional sort of plays down the track.
Yep.
But we're also going to start putting together some more foundational sort of episodes about portfolio construction and really sort of break it down, like, because there's many ways to skin the cat, so to speak. You know, we talked about yourself, you know, buying in cycles in regional, making good money, maybe, you know, recycling to the next one. We talked about myself here and how we've kind of, you know, built the equity up, you know, using compounding to our effect. Yeah. There's so many ways. So we're going to go in and break that down. So we're going to have a good mix of everything for people going forward on the pod.
Steve, awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.